I went back and forth to Iran and knew that I was free here because we could run in the streets, we could play soccer and wear shorts, have our hair out, not have police monitor us because of how we're dressed. You had to make sure that if any comité came up to you, that you were fully covered. And even my family member said, if you have comité come up to you, just pretend you can't speak Farsi. Just pretend you don't understand. We'll tell them you're from elsewhere. Um, and because of these massacres, so many people were mourning 40 days after January 13th, and the families refused to cry. So they fled the streets in dance and song and celebration
Wow.
to refuse to let this regime, and that's their way of saying you're not going to win.
Hey, everybody, it's Paul with the Curators. What is it like to be an Iranian American living here in America, but having family over in Iran, having been born in that country, and seeing the turmoil in the world today? What does that feel like? What are the implications? What does it mean to a person's daily life here in America? I think we're going to get some answers to those questions and more today as we speak with Gaz Khosravi. Gaz, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for having me.
I had the honor of hearing a message of yours recently that was very powerful, and I wanted to explore that a little bit more with you because I think it's an important message that needs to be heard. Before we get to that, I'd like to get a sense and give our audience a sense of has your journey been like? You were born in Iran, you moved to America at a young age, and some of your family was here. Some of your family, especially extended family, remained in that country. Would you walk us through that? What was it like? And paint that picture for us. Thank you.
Sure, sure. So, I was born in 1981 in the city of Tehran, which is the capital city of Iran. Um, eh, Post-revolution of Iran that happened in 1979. Um, it was during the Iran and Iraq war that I was born. And as my father says, my mom went into labor in the middle of the night, and it was during a war. Then you couldn't have any lights on at night because that would attract, the adversaries, and it could bomb you. So my dad drove to the hospital with my mom going into labor with the door open so he could see the lines of the streets, so he could get to the hospital and not attract any attention to the car that was driving. So
Wow.
to say I was born in a tumultuous situation is accurate. Um, we left Iran when I was 9 months old. The path to future, really hopeful future, my parents decided could not be established in their home country, in our home country of Iran, that they loved so much, and they didn't want to leave, but the regime that took over after the revolution of 1979, there was no indication that they would bring on such a radical um, Islamic view into the country and govern the country under the rules of Islam. And as we've seen it played out in today, the Iranian regime, the Islamic Iranian regime, is a terrorist government, and they are not for their people. but they believe that they are here for a greater good of God and of Allah. So my parents took the path of somewhat least resistance at that time. We were very fortunate. My father was able to get into university in America, and as his dependents, my mother and myself, we were able to leave the country in a relatively straightforward path. Um, I mean, it came with its own trials and tribulations of having to go to Germany first. My dad had to go to Germany first, and his passport was expired, but the person at the airport was an Iranian. So he was able to kind of get him through with an expired passport. Again, like a higher power looking
Mm-hmm.
over him. And coming into the States, we came with the ability to have a place to live in because my uncles, so my mom's brother and my dad's brother, were both in America at that time. So they had stayed once my parents and they all came over in 1977 pre-revolution. My two uncles stayed in America. That's when they were still having relations between Iran and America. They stayed in America. And because they stayed, they were able to give us a place when we had to come out of Iran. So we were able to go stay with them. And my dad pursued his education, and we stayed legally through student visas and then work visas, and then green card, and eventually becoming a citizen. I was 15 years old when I became an American citizen. And yeah.
Now, you mentioned the current Iranian regime being terrorist. I want to put that on the shelf for a moment because we'll get to that, right? But I want to get a sense of what it's like for you. Like, do you feel fortunate? How do you feel for the family that you have over in Iran? And you obviously you're leading one life, they're leading another life. You've been over there for many, many summers as you've grown up, basically at least every other year. So you've seen the change in them, you've seen the change in the government, the life over there, and yet here you are in America, blessed, spirited, and being an important member of your community and a family that I'm sure you're very proud of. So it's a completely different life over here, right? So give us some thoughts on that whole experience, Gas. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, thanks, Paul. My life is a gift, absolutely a gift. Um, I grew up free. In America, we are free, as we say, the land of the free, which means we're able to share our voices and they matter. They're important to be heard. We are able to dress how we want, own our own bodies, and have freedom. Um, my experience on going back and forth to Iran was initially scary because they're not free. And as Americans, we don't know, we don't have that even understanding of what it is not to be free, what it is to not be able to leave your country, what it is that your family cannot visit you. We don't have that, Iran, but I did. I went back and forth to Iran and knew that I was free here because we could run in the streets, we could play soccer and wear shorts, have our hair out, not have police monitor us because of how we're dressed. And in Iran, they they don't have that freedom. So women did not have that freedom. So at a very young age, because I was a girl, 5 years old, going to Iran, there was a real sense of fear because I didn't understand really why is there a police saying, excuse me, woman, you know, hijab رعایت کن, which is please mind your head covering. And there is a whole committee called, there was a whole police force called Comité that is just in the country to regulate the dress of a woman, the covering of a woman. So that force, that police force, that fear was everywhere. As soon as you left your home in Iran, you had to be covered appropriately. You had to keep your head down, and you had to make sure that if any comité came up to you, that you were fully covered. And even my family members said, if you have comité come up to you, just pretend you can't speak Farsi. Just pretend you don't understand. We'll tell them you're from elsewhere. So we don't have that here. There wasn't, you have to have this face on the outside when you go inside to be something different. Here we're free. So I learned that at a young age. I also learned the abundance that we have here. The abundance. Again, as a young child going to Iran during the summertime, I want to play in the streets. Let's go eat ice cream. We have popcorn or bubble gum and all those fun kid stuff. And here, I mean, at the grocery store, you get 7 different Bubbliciouses to choose from. You don't like Bubblicious? Go to Trident. And that's your choice. You want to go to the ice cream truck? There's 25 different ice creams to choose from. What do you feel like today? What do you feel like tomorrow? In Iran, there was one ice cream. You either had basani Akim ya sandwich Irani. So you either had the ice cream on the stick or the ice cream sandwich. That's it. You either had bubble gum, one type of bubble gum, or you don't. That was jarring. It's like, wow, there's only that's like, that's it? Like, that's all?
Sure.
Which was,
I sometimes wonder, I would not want that. I would not want that such drastically limited option, available. But sometimes I wonder in this country if we have too many options, I remember growing up, we had, for example, TV stations, we had channels 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, and then WNET 13, PBS. So you had 7 stations. And you know what, Gaz? There was always something on. And you would get up, and because you had to walk over to the TV and turn the dial, you would actually want to, you would choose a program, you'd go back to your chair or sofa and sit and watch it. Today, we have the proverbial doom scrolling of TV channels, just like with our phones. And I wonder, and this is not to refute anything you're saying. I'm just awestruck by the overabundance of choice here today as well. Which can have an impact on people, especially young people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree with that, Paul.
Yeah.
I agree with that, Paul.
Yeah.
But
but still, the culture shock you're describing, right? Coming here and it's like, wow, what is going on? I remember talking with someone who had come here as a student, like on a student visa from Ghana, and saw for the first time the New York City skyline as he was getting a ride from the airport to wherever he was staying. And he described first time awe of seeing something that he had never experienced before, only in pictures, right? Which doesn't do it justice. So yeah, Yeah.
mhm, mhm,
But what I'm getting from you is that you really have a deep appreciation for the life you have here, and at the same time you weep for the family over there, not just your family, but for all of the citizens in that country, and it must be hard. I can weep for them as an
mhm,
American, but not like you.
mhm,
You've got the personal stake there.
mhm, mhm. It's
Yeah.
very hard. It's very hard, but um, we've been conditioned because this isn't new. Our family not being free, not being able to come here, having this such a different life. Um, that's been my whole life. So it was growing up was confusing. Blessed because I was loved on both ends. In America, we had a beautiful community. The Iranians that we knew here really, when we say family, they really stuck together and tried to carry our Iranian cultural traditions out. Um, and I think it's something important to note just about Iran in general to set stage. Um, though Iran is primarily that Muslim country, it is filled with there's 13 different ethnic religions and backgrounds. There's Baharis, there's Jews, there's Christians, there's Buddhists, there's um, uh, but there's a bunch of other, say non-Islamic, and the language we speak is Farsi, not Arabic. We're the only country in the world that their home language is Farsi. Azerbaijan and Afghanistan also speak Farsi as part of that, and Urdu. Some Indians also have a subset of Farsi, but Farsi is a language that it's written in Arabic, like the letters are Arabic, but it's Arabic, Persian, Persian Fars, and French. Those are the combinations that really make up Farsi. So just to kind of set the stage of the country it is, because it's in the Middle East that can be lumped all together, but it's a bit more diverse than that perception. So
Hmm. Hmm.
what do
But
I?
the leadership is
Mm,
different.
the leadership, yes, the Islamic regime, they are ruling the country under the law, under the rules um, of the religion. So yes, they're very set in that. Go ahead.
How has that changed since you went to visit Iran as a
Mm,
young person? The conditions weren't great then, but it seems like they've gotten worse. Is that accurate?
yes, because the regime has gotten stronger. So the regime's gotten stronger and stronger, and um, they've been around
Yeah,
longer.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
so their views of and making sure we're all obeying the laws of Islam, following those views out, living life by the rules of Islam, giving your life to God. That is what governs the country, and that is not what the view of the people, all the people are. Yes, there are some fanatic Islamic people that do agree with that. Just like here in America, there's some radicals that believe in um, certain religious groups
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
cultural.
Hmm.
They exist, so that Iran is no different in that respect. But the majority of the people, I could confidently say about 85%, 80 to 85% of the people are not like that. Um,
And that's important. I think when you get down to it, and we'll talk about this, the difference between the people and the governments, both in Iran and in America. And if we sat down with the peoples of both countries, just like you and I are doing today, and we had a conversation, we would enjoy, we would respect, we would recognize all of us as children of God, right? And kind of say this is all unnecessary. What's going on? I'm interested because you were talking about this change and the regime, and one of the measures of this is the way they're imposing blackouts and making it very hard to communicate internally. Have you had any success communicating with your family there?
We have. They are, there's means of getting internet. The Iranian people need to buy VPN cards. Now the government regulates it, and people who can afford it can buy it. So we're fortunate that one side of my family that's in Tehran, they can afford to buy VPN cards. So I probably once a week, I will hear their voices recorded on my WhatsApp group, and they can download some pictures that we send. So we used to speak via FaceTime, their WhatsApp, probably daily, way more than maybe Americans talk to their family, but we would.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, there'd be just chats going back and forth. My two cousins are in Toronto. My aunt and my other cousins are in Tehran, and we are in the United States. So we on a WhatsApp group would chat daily, call daily. Now those calls, I was fortunate to get a video call from them last week, so I was very fortunate to see them. But I do hear their voices once a week. One of the family members, either myself, my dad, or my mom, will hear our family's voices once a week. So my family I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, no. What do you hear in those voices? What is the emotional tone?
Always joyous to hear my voice. Always.
Yeah, yeah. Do you ever get a sense that there's like, do they ever express imminent danger? Is that always an existential issue?
Now, they do not. They never do. And whether that's to never worry us, because there's nothing we can do, or it really isn't. The fear that us Americans have of the danger of what's going on there is not accurate. It's not as it's not that accurate. Because also my Iranian family has been living in danger for 47 years.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the danger has been the people that are outside their door. So now you're throwing bombs on them. Actually, my Iranian family member, they'll be like, oh yeah, oh there's a bomb over there. Oh, they got that building. Okay, that's good. They are completely like, oh, they're bombing those other things. They're not bombing us people. Oh, good. 'Cause that's better than what they've had. When they have their own government and their own police force out to get their own people, that's scarier than this. Mm-hmm. So whenever I speak to them, to my Tehran family, can afford more, so they have the ability. I could see them and speak to them. My Mashhad family, which is where my dad's from, it's another city in Tehran. Another city in Iran, which is in the northeast corner of Iran. They do not have the luxury of being able to buy VPN cards, so they use a landline. They use a landline, they dial a code, they pay a phone bill. And we go back to how I remember when we were speaking to our family in Iran when I was 10. And they used to say, Pulisim dare miduse. So, like, don't talk so much because you're burning the telephone line. So, as a way of being, so we would communicate that way then. So that's what we're doing now. Um, they're very resilient and um, continue to choose joy. And every time I do speak with them, there's happiness in there's happiness in their voices,
That's
and happy
beautiful.
to hear. It really is.
Mm.
It really is.
Do any of your family over in Iran want to leave? Or do they ever express a desire to come to America?
Yeah. So, because I have two families, my dad's side, my mom's side. My mom's side, they did. They have expressed desire, and they actually were able to go or to get out of Iran. They were able to go down the path of gaining Canada. They were able to go to Canada. So, over these past 45 years, the regime has gotten stronger, and the hope for people to leave the country has gotten greater and greater. So, particularly in the people who could afford it, there were ways to buy your way out of Iran. About 25 years ago, Canada opened up an immigration policy that allowed Iranians to go to Canada if they would pay a certain amount to the government and commit to opening up a Canadian franchise and running that business for 5 years and paying the government. So my Tehran family did have the luxury of being able to do that. So my aunt, her husband, who's a physician in Iran, he owns a hospital, um, and their three children, Atusa, who's my age, Omid, who's 2 years younger than me, I'm 45, and then Navid, who's 3 years younger than him. They all came to Canada. Now, the complication is, Paul, is that coming to Canada or coming to America is great on paper, but you're taking people out of the comfort of their home, and not everyone can adjust. Can adjust to the isolation, can adjust to the language, can adjust to just the cultural differences. Um, America, Western world, Canada included in that. Um, it is a self-governed. You are self-made. You need to do follow a path, work hard, work, commit yourself, and not everybody, not all my family were able to stay just because they couldn't assimilate. So my two cousins, Atusa and Nabit, were able to stay in Canada. My middle cousin, Omid, chose to go back to Iran. My
Hmm.
family in Mashhad, I have two cousins there too, Shohre and Shahayek, and those sweet, sweet girls, they're 36 and 33. Um, I don't speak to them directly. Um, and the last time I saw them was in 2019 in Indonesia. Um, and they've always expressed desires to come to America. But their ability to is much more limited. They don't have those kinds of funds that my Tehran family does. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, uh, I'm going to point out what I think is a difference between you and me. And that is that I was born in this country in 1958,
Mhm.
grew up as a baby boomer. Basically, I grew up in what I call the cash and prizes generation. And and I didn't really lack for anything. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I may have lacked for some things emotionally, but in terms of the world around me, it was all relatively achievable, attainable, and certainly none of the conditions that you describe.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a result of that, I take a lot of things for granted as an American citizen. You do not take things for granted. I can hear that in your voice. You are very grateful for the most simple things. And that's what comes across to me, Gaz. And I would imagine that the family that you speak to in Iran and here are the same way. That there's a lot of gratitude for the simple things in life. And somebody told me recently, Paul, if you're having trouble with gratitude, why don't you write down a list of the things you take for granted instead,
Okay.
right? And I took that suggestion, and that brings me to the conclusion. Hey, Paul, what the hell do you have to complain about? You know, right? And that's kind of where I'm coming. I'm coming around finally after all these years. I'm 67. Took a while, but I'm getting there. Um, we'll I just want to highlight this. I have something to show our audience here. And this is a relatively recent, I think in the last week or so, uh, uh, somewhat official tally of the toll in the war based upon some sources: Al Jazeera, Time Magazine, Iran Ministry of Health, and the Pentagon. So uh, I would I would imagine these are somewhat accurate. We're seeing the magnitude, you know, the death toll is rising, the number of injured is rising, and so it's real. I mean, this is real. This is really happening. What do you think, Gaz? What would you like Americans to know that they don't know about? I mean, you're describing it beautifully, but what would you like to see America do differently? Is it the war is not the solution? You want to see the change in Iran come from within?
I think it just has to. It can't. It, the conflict is within them. They, um, uh, the Iranian regime, the Persian community has been around for 5,000 years. America is celebrating 250 years.
We're the
So,
kids on the block. Yes.
yeah, yeah. So, to put into context, we have the mail system is Iranian. Surgery was coming from Iran. Ice cubes, igloos are coming from Iran. They were developing igloos in deserts 5,000 years ago. Cataract surgery, the number of things that have come from Iranians, Persians, is tremendous. I think there isn't enough understanding about that, how deep and rich and old and ancient our people are, our culture is. Um, so it would be great to have more of that understanding, not to show we're any better, but just to have an understanding that we are more than Iran and have really a lot more, have contributed to this free life that we're living in America in many, many, many ways that is not seen because it already existed. Um,
Yeah.
and if I had my uncle on the show, he would be able to tell you all of the things that the Persian culture, the Iranians have done. I stay off of the doom scrolling or the internet watching and going too far down the rabbit hole of who we were and what we brought because we are here today. And the reality that we live in today is blessed to be an American, blessed to be raising my children in a free country, and gratitude for that. Um, as opposed to saying, oh, we did this and now we guys have that. But it would be nice to have some sort of understanding from American people that, oh, these Iranians, oh, they're different than Arabs. Oh, they're actually considered white because we descended from the Aryan Mountains. So we're not, we're white people. That's where our ancestors are from. And we don't speak Arabic. We're different than that. Our language is infiltrated from the French because of the trading that was going on in many, many years ago for spices from Iran, back and forth from Iran to the Mediterranean. So it would be nice if there would be some sort of education amongst our history and many other histories, but I think America could do a better job of awareness of other civilizations in the history. So
Yes, my family comes from Italy, and Americans generally look favorably upon Italians, right? Why not look just as favorably upon Iranians?
yeah,
It's really no different, because we're
yeah,
talking about the people, not the government, right? And
correct.
and it's funny when I've been abroad, there's this kind of growing suspicion about being a U.S. citizen. There are places where people look upon America in a not so positive light, right? And so I want to take this back because I started with a couple of other people. We started an organization a
Mm,
couple of years ago. It's called American Health Revolution.
mm,
And the reason I bring this up is it is a grassroots movement.
mm,
In America, we allow chemicals to be sprayed on our crops. We allow things that you would never think are in our daily food intake, right? That are actually poisoning us. These are chemicals that European countries do not allow, but we allow them here because it increases the profits of the corporations, the food companies, the chemical companies, and they finagle the studies to allow them to suggest that there's no real harm. Meanwhile, we have an explosion in chronic disease and
mm,
all kinds of health atrocities directly attributable to these chemicals and degradation of our environment, right? So we started this organization as a grassroots movement to say, hey, we cannot rely on the government to effect the change that we need to regain health of our bodies. We
mm,
can fight them all we want, and there may be fights worth fighting, but we, the people, have to take charge of our own health, our own bodies, and learn about what's in there. And the reason I bring that up, Gaz, is because it sounds like a very similar experience on a different topic in terms of Iran and how the people need to be the ones to create the change within the country, right? We need to create change in this country too, but it's not going to come from the top. And one of the issues that I've always been harping on is that people don't often walk around not realizing that their views of the world have so often been formed for them, not by them, right? That they watch television, they form an opinion, they read a newspaper or a magazine, and they consider that information without really thinking critically and exploring the alternate views and recognizing that whatever the source is, somebody behind it with an agenda, right? Doesn't make them wrong. It's just really important to recognize that, that there's always something else going on. And so I would like to see a lot of that similar change in this country, where the people, wake up. You heard me say before, I woke up in a generation that takes things for granted. I try not to take things for granted today, because I know how precious our freedom is, how easy it is to lose, and I really, really pray for you, your family, the Iranian people, and just stopping the war. The word coward has war right in it. So it's interesting, right? And so
Yes.
so I say, it begs the question: is war for cowards? You know. So,
Yeah.
what would you like to see? Let's move on toward the wrapping this up. Not that we need to wrap it up, but
Hmm.
what would is it? Do you have any like wishes? Is there something on your wish list in terms of this conflict, for the countries to, you know, understand, come to terms with? I mean, obviously, no more bloodshed would be one thing,
Yes.
but
Hmm.
but um, but is it media coverage? Is that getting uh, uh, you know
You know,
misinterpreted? Yeah.
so actually, and I want to go back and touch on something that um, you asked, and with regards to what is actually going on in Iran currently that we may not know about here. You showed those numbers,
Yes.
and that's great resources and very true. And stopping bloodshed is 100% absolutely what we'd like to do. But continuing in Iran outside of the war, the government is continuing to execute their own people. So since February 1st, they have executed over 700 of their own citizens, mostly under the age of 30, for treason, not obeying what God would want them to, reasons that are dancing in the street. Um, it's unthinkable. There is no understanding, and they're not just executing them; they're torturing them before execution. So, and they're torturing their families through physical harm, through psychological harm, through um, taking away their mind. I mean, their torture. The rapes and the eye gouging and the acid on the faces and the it's
Good
really it's
Lord.
it's really horrific. The extent of horror that they're doing for what reasons is it's mind blowing. I'll give you an example. There was a man that was, and having dogs in Iran is also illegal. You can't have animals. They're viewed as dirty in the Islamic world, so you can't have a dog. So there was this scenario that there was a man, he was dancing in the street. He got captured. He said that this is against Islam. This is, you must be executed. So his execution was not just a simple execution. After they tortured and beat him, they tied him to a telephone pole in the town, and they starved him to death. They starved him to death, and they put a bottle of water in front of him as he was tied to this telephone pole until he eventually died. And then they let the animals eat him in the on the telephone pole to just be an example of this is what happens to you when
This
you're
happened in February.
this happened in January. I think maybe January.
Jan-
I've seen.
and
Yeah.
and and how does that information even
Hmm.
get known. How is it that
Yeah,
you came to know about this?
yeah. So, but there are Iranian reporters that are in Iran that communicate to American sources, but not your your CNN or your New York Times. They are reporting to European reporters, so they are getting information, real-time information out. There are also so many brave young kids who are recording these and trying to smuggle them out of the country. And there are people on this side, on the free side, the diaspora, who have contacts with them. So there are very few sources that I will, even in the doom scrolling, which I don't do because it makes me too upset. And like everywhere, there are people within the regime that are trying to infiltrate thinking to people who are, there are people that are for the regime that are pretending they're not for the regime to infiltrate certain kind of fear and thinking for people who are not against the regime. So there is a lot of that going on, some mixed stories happening. So there are only a very few people that I do trust that
Sure,
are coming
you're
out that are leaking those stories because there are people in Iran who are taking them or they have recorded them. There's another man saying that, he will be executed. He knows that, but please show his letter saying he had it in his pocket. Please show his body to his dog. If his dog does not see his dead body, he will think that he left him. And
yeah,
just,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
just so sad. It's for things.
It's almost incomprehensible,
It is.
the depth of despair and what they would even think is appropriate to
Yeah,
do to these people. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And they're people. They're people with lives. They're your Charlie Kirk. That's just a man. And rest in peace. But that's one. That's one person.
right.
Uh, the massacre in Iran in January 13th, that the government just went out in machetes and killed. I think the number was like 15,000. Put them body bags. Had people go searching for their dead in body bags in where they're holding it in ditches in the city. Um, and so that happened all before the war. That's all true. Um, and the mourning that was happening. So I think pretty indicative of the Iranian people. So you have and they're children. They're really children, Paul, because they're the ones who don't have a future, and they're the ones who have never lived without being oppressed. So they're the ones who don't have anything to lose. They don't have
There's no
anything.
they don't have right, and there's no hope
There's no
because
hope.
the hope has been taken from them, and that's what then begins to snowball
Yeah,
over a period of years. And that's what we have to change. We have to
yeah,
restore hope.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So after someone is killed, we celebrate or we honor 40 days after the death. That's when the Iranians believe that their soul rises, and um, and because of these massacres, so many people were mourning on 40 days after January 13th, and the families refused to cry. So they fled the streets in dance and song and celebration
Wow.
to refuse to let this regime. And that's their way of saying, you're not going to win. That we're going to still, we're going to persevere. So that's just showing who they are. They're not going to, you could take everything from them: joy, freedom, It comes within your self-freedom. Really, you have the choice. And I've seen repeatedly that the Iranian people continue to choose to be joyous. They continue to choose to love, um, and continue to choose to educate themselves so they can be better. So,
I'm, you know, I think I'm overwhelmed, Gaz,
mm,
and certainly very inspired by what you're saying. And you know what, Gaz, as we wrap this up here, I know that you love America, and I think you're saying that the Iranian people love America and the American people. And I don't know that that's a message that really gets carried properly. And I would love for Americans to love the Iranian people just like every other people, you know, that we interact with. What a beautiful culture! What a beautiful message! I'll leave the last word to you, please.
yeah,
Thanks.
thanks, Paul. Yeah, Iranians in Iran, outside Iran, they love America. They love the people. They love the country. They idolize us. Um, and I hope that Americans with more awareness of what's going on in Iran, and hopefully with a little bit more context, they can gain some sympathy. They'll never be able to do real empathy, but sympathy and just acceptance of who we are and how much we'd like to just be sitting at the same table together. So yeah, that's
Yeah. Let's do that. Let's aim to sit at the table together. Get it all out on the table, iron out our differences, and celebrate our differences. You know, and that's one of humanity's greatest challenges for forever, right? But this is a step in the right direction. This is a message that needs to be told, and you brought a beautiful message, Gaz. Thank you so much.
thank you so much, Paul, for having me.